Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, I want to show you guys how the AA works within V-Ray. Now, AA stands for Antialiasing, and most of you, if you've ever played a video game, you've probably seen that setting in the options. Now, what is Antialiasing actually? Well, before I go in and start the options that are etched in V-Ray, I want to give you a bit of general information as to what exactly does the anti-aliasing do. Now, I've downloaded a few images from the internet that basically show what the AA does. Now, all the images that we digitally see or that we get to see, that we either take with our cameras or our phones, they are basically pixels like this. Now, when you zoom in down, you get to see to the level where you get to see the pixels. You can notice that they're all like squares with color. So the process where these squares that are something like this turn into a smooth line like this, it's basically called anti-aliasing. Now, if without anti-aliasing, all of our images would have jagged edges. Now, in order to fix that, we have this anti-aliasing. Now, we have different, I've downloaded a few more images that would show that thing. Here is another one. Like I said, without anti-aliasing, the edges would be very jagged and sharp. With hardware anti-aliasing, we get to see some blurriness. Then we have hardware line anti-aliasing, a different kind of anti-aliasing. Then we have the pre-filtering, the Gaussian anti-aliasing, etc. So, different ways. Here is another one without anti-aliasing and with anti-aliasing. So, how does it actually work? Well, when you look at this, image, you can basically see that you have two colors. You have black and you have white. What the anti-aliasing does is it samples this color and it samples this one. And if the difference between them is smaller than the amount that you have told it, or you have set up in the settings, it is going to try and add an extra pixel, which is going to have 50% of the black color and 50% of the white color. That pixel is represented by this over here. As you can see, for example, this one over here is 100% black. This one over here, on the other hand, has some parts that are whiter, or it's dark gray. So it has received a little bit more of the white color. So it's 75% black, 25% white. This one, on the other hand, if I zoom in just a tad bit more, you can see that it as well has some gray scale on it, but it has 75% white, which is just like here, while only 25% black. And for example, this one over here, this one was acquired by sampling the 75% black and the 25, or actually this one is 50% black, and we've received this one. So basically the anti-aliasing makes a tampon zone between high difference in colors. So let's see how that actually works in 3ds Max in V-Ray, and why it's important to know how to control it. So here we are in Max. I'm gonna open my settings, or just press F10, or just press over here, render setup. I can see that I'm already in V-Ray 2.4. If you're using the 3.x version, The settings should be more or less the same. I'm gonna make a video I'm gonna cover the differences between the 2.x and the 3.x version, but for now, just bear with me. All right, when you first open it, like in here, you can see that when you scroll down a bit, you come upon a roll down menu which says V-Ray Image Sampler or Antialiasing. When you click it, you basically have three options over here. That's in the 2.x version, or 2.2 or 2.3 or 2.4 like I'm using right now. So let's see what are these three options. And we're going to come to the Antialiasing filter a bit later on, so I'm going to turn it off for now, so it's not important. So first of all, I'm going to choose fixed. And one thing that you want to consider is that depending on what you have open here, the next roll down menu is going to change, because this menu represents the options that are with this sampler. So the fixed one, or the fixed type image sampler, we're gonna see the options for it here. If we put it on an adaptive DMC, we're gonna see the options for the adaptive DMC. So for now, we're gonna stick with fixed, and the only thing that I can change here is the subdivs or the subdivision level for the Antialiasing. Now, in order to see what this is, I'm going to open a sphere into the scene like this. I'm going to press G, so I remove the actual grid, Control or actually Alt W to make it full screen, and I'm also going to press Shift F, so I turn on the save frame so I can see where the camera is going to be rendering. Now, I'm gonna go into frame buffer and make sure it's turned on, because I want to render with the V-Ray frame buffer. If you've seen the previous video, you're gonna know exactly why I choose to always use it in my renders. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit render. And I can see that right away it rendered the entire image, just like I'm seeing it. So I'm gonna press the sRGB just so I can see it with the exact color like we're seeing it here. So what happened? We basically got the first render out with a fixed image sampler with one subdivision. Now, in order to see what actually happened, I have to zoom in to the edges. Now, we already said that Antialiasing works the way that it adds it adds a tampon zone between different colors. So in this case, since I have a subdivision of 1, which is the lowest you can go, you cannot go 0. 1 is the lowest subdivision. The only thing that's done is we've basically received right around here, we have one line in which we got about 10 or 25% black, and everything else is green over here and black over here. So if I put the subdivisions on level 2 over here, instead of 1, I put in 2, and let me just render out a different image and just zoom in again, render. Right away, you can see that we are starting to get that jaggedness away from the edges, and we get some blurring happening at the edges. So with a subdivs of 2, it basically adds 2 layers of the Antialiasing. Now, if I add subdivisions 3, it's gonna improve it even further. It's gonna have another extra level, like you can see. Now it has 3 different colors. And if we want to see this even better, like we can up it up to like 6. But bear in mind one thing. When you go higher on the subdivs settings, the rendering time is gonna go up more. So if I render now, you can see that even on a scene that's as simple as this one, where we only have one ball, the settings for it, if we put it on 6, takes quite a bit of time. But did we actually really need 6 subdivisions? We didn't get too much quality gains from those 6 subdivisions, but the render times did go up. Now, all right, let's do it like this. I'm going to save it in my history so you guys can see it better. I'm going to save this one, and it says it took 6.6 seconds to render it. Now, I'm going to increase this. Instead of 6 subdivisions, I'm going to put it at 10. So we're still at fixed subdivisions, but now we have actually a fixed image sampler, but now we have 10 subdivisions. If we run the render now, it's going to take considerably longer time, but when I zoom in, I can see that once that this is going to clear up, we're really not getting anything extra. So no quality has been received, while at the same time, just put this one as A, this one as B. And now when we go with the line, we can barely see an improvement like over here. So does it really warrant the time that we've put in? Like, for example, this costed us about 6 seconds, and this costed us about 18 seconds to finish. So what happened? And why would we use this fixed option? Well, now when the actual antialiasing worked, since it's on fixed, it's basically sampling every single pixel in the scene. So that means that if it finds a black pixel, it tries to add 10 levels of antialiasing around it, even if the next pixel next to it is black as well. So it doesn't try to compensate. It puts that antialiasing everywhere. Now, the way it's supposed to work is it's supposed to add those anti-aliasing levels just on places where the color differentiates. Like, for example, it should put it around here where we have a difference between the green and the black. But with the fixed, it doesn't discriminate. It goes everywhere. Hence, we get a higher rendering time. Now, I'm going to change it from fixed and drop it down to adaptive DMC. Right away, you're going to see that the color, actually the settings for the adaptive DMC are different than, hold on, let's clear this, are a bit different from the fixed antialiasing. Now, the way the adaptive DMC works is it has a way of determining where it's supposed to add the actual subdivs. And you basically have 2 settings. One, it says minimum subdivisions. The other one says maximum subdivisions. So with these 2 settings, we are telling it that it can choose where it wants to put one subdivision. And if you remember, like when we used the fixed one, when we used 1, it was very fast, but the edges were jagged. When we used 6, the render time was around 8 seconds, I think. Yeah. So now we're going to put it at 6, which is going to allow it to use 6 subdivision in places that it deems are worthy for the application of antialiasing. And right now, I'm not going to touch on the color threshold, so I'm going to use it like this. And I'm just going to put a render off. So click render now. And it finished. So I'm going to save it now. As you can see, it took half a second. If I zoom in, we can see that we've basically gotten the same result we got with the fixed one, but we used 6 subdivisions over there. It took us about 8 seconds, while here it took us half a second. Let's try and put the maximum subdivisions on the same level of 10 that we used with the fixed one and see what happens then. Remember, we got a rendering time of 18 seconds on the fixed one. So adaptive DMC, again, maximum subdivisions 10. We render. The render is done in half a second and received the same amount of quality that we got with the fixed one. So, as you can see, it's a much better choice to use the adaptive DMC, and here simply control how many subdivisions you want to have in the scene by controlling it through the maximum subdivision and the minimum subdivision. And the way that the actual calculations are used is through the color threshold. By default, it's left so that the DMC sampler threshold is the level at which this is going to be computed. This can be seen in the settings file. Over here, you have the noise threshold, which is 0.01. So if we get back here, we can either use that or we can turn it off. So everything that's underneath 0.01 in the color difference is going to be used to received anti-aliasing. The way we can choose that is right-click anywhere on this image, and you basically get the pixel information for every single pixel. So the difference between, like you can see in the color float, it's between the green one and the black one here is 0.030. The black one is 0.00. It received 1 anti-aliasing. So because it was greater than 0.01, it received 1 sample. So without getting it too technical, I would recommend that whenever you're using the antialiasing, which would be every time, you use adaptive DMC. And the maximum subdivs should basically tell your V-Ray how many subdivs should it use. In reality, when you're working, you should probably never go above 25. Although there is the general settings that Vladov from Chaos Group dropped down, where he put it at 1 to 100 and then called it the general fix. But in reality, you don't need so much. Like 1 to 25 would be tops for even for scenes that have very big differences between color levels. So 1 to 20 or 1 to 25 should be the range in which you should keep your adaptive DMC. But more about that and how it can cause some noise if we lower the threshold in a different video. But for now, I just want to tell you that when you're using adaptive DMC, make sure that you drop the maximum amount to around 20 and you should be golden. Now, there is another one, which is the adaptive subdivision. This one, on the other hand, has a whole different set of rules, as the minimum rate and the maximum rate go from minus to plus. Where the way it works is it subdivides the image into squares. Like, for example, a minimum rate of -1, it basically tries to subdivide the image in half and then sample it like that. Again, I don't use this one, and if I would go about in depth as to why I don't use it, is basically that every time that I do, I go with adaptive DMC while working with the 2.x version of V-Ray. So use the adaptive DMC in the adaptive DMC image sampler options, make sure you make the maximum subdivisions at 20, and you should be okay with the settings. Now, the only thing that's left here is the Antialiasing filter. This filter, when you click it on, it basically adds an extra filter that's trying to deal with some of the issues that can arise. Now, if you click down here, you can see that you have quite a bit of a list. But from here, you basically have two filters that you are pretty much going to be using. The first one would be Catmull ROM. And when you click it on the side, it gives you a brief description. It says it's a 25 pixel filter with pronounced edge enhancement effects. So this is a great filter to use if you're doing some kind of like architectural design or interior design or exterior or whatever. But if you use the other one, the Mitchell-Netrevali filter, this one is basically blurring between ringing and anistrophy. So you can control how much you get the blur and how much you get from the ringing. So those two are basically the filters that are most commonly used. For me, I use Catmull ROM, but it's not a big it's not a big deal, or it's not wrong even if you use some of the other ones. The most important part about these filters is that when you use them, you basically want to use them so you can battle the Moira effect. And the Moira effect is when you have a texture that's basically repetitive and similar in color. When you increase the tiling of that texture, sometimes it can give you a wavy look on it. But I'm pretty sure in some of the future videos, we're gonna have to deal with the Moira effect, so I'll explain a bit more when we get there. So for now, that would be about how to use the image sampler or the anti-aliasing in V-Ray. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.